Hey friends, Damian Mason joining you to discuss today's topic, which is your civil liberties, your business, and when the government declares war. I already know the detractors are going to say, you're not taking coronavirus seriously enough. I've already had people carrying on about that. No, I'm not overreacting, and I actually see a real bad pattern here, and I see a bunch of economic devastation brought on by the government's action. And then I see something longer term that has me really worried, and I'll tell you why. You see, I like history. I've kept up with a lot of history. I've read a lot of history in books and whatnot. I keep up with these things. I also remember I was a former political comedian, which means I'm an observer. I look at everything and connect the dots. It's what comedy is. So, what I see that troubles me so much is a willingness of the electorate, the citizens, out of fear, allowing government to take on a tremendous amount more power and therefore ceding your civil liberties. This is just one headline. It's out of U.S. News and World Report. California, New York, and Illinois issue stay-at-home orders and what is allowed. I even saw a media outlet saying that police officers in New York City were going to be out starting Sunday night to encourage people to maintain 6 feet distance and to not be out. We're talking about restricting movement. We're talking about how close one is allowed to be with some other individual. And again, you can keep telling me, oh, well, this is about fighting the virus. Yes, that's exactly what every politician that wants to grow the size of government would put out there first. I'm not unfamiliar with science. I've taken 14 hours of Purdue University lab sciences. I get virology. Certainly, I'm not an infectious disease expert and never claimed to be. But I can see a worse sickness coming, and that is a huge growth of government. It's not just about the money and the bailouts, it's the war on this virus. Let me just give you a little history here. The war on poverty was begun under the LBJ administration in 1964. Today, on a percentage basis in the United States of America, we have the same percentage of people living in poverty. The impoverished percentage of our population is roughly the same as it was in 1964. So in 56 years, what have we accomplished? We grew the size of government. We created a whole hell of a lot more government dependence, and we created a lot of government expense at the expense of taxpayers. And we haven't really moved the needle on poverty in 56 years. In 1980s, under Ronald Reagan and Nancy, we created the war on drugs. We just started waging the war on drugs. Remember Miami Vice and all that sort of stuff? And today, here, 35, 40 years later, from when Ronnie and Nancy were in the White House, what do we have? We have now a complete rolling over. Let's just go ahead and legalize drugs because states have learned you can legalize it and tax it up to 50%. So this war on drugs seems a little hollow, doesn't it? Let's see, on the one hand, we're having a war on drugs, and on the other hand, states are saying, why bother fighting the war? Let's just go ahead and steal the money from it. Drug use is as high as it was in the 1980s, and we've moved on from cocaine to places like where I live in Indiana, meth and heroin, for Christ's sakes. So we got a real problem here, and the war on drugs hasn't won anything. But what did we do? We gave the Drug Enforcement Administration a whole bunch of money, created the DEA, created a bunch more powers for law enforcement. You can seize your house, seize your car, et cetera, et cetera. So where am I going with this? The war on poverty, expensive, and continue to create a dependent welfare class and hasn't moved the needle on poverty. The war on drugs did not win any war on drugs. It hadn't even ended. In fact, it just grew the size of government, and now we have more drugs, or as many as we've ever had going on in the 40 years since the war on drugs was begun. Now let's talk about the war on terror. After the terror attacks of 9/11, the United States was scared. We were worried. Our stock market imploded. You can relate kind of to what's going on right now. The people decided we need to do something about this, and more importantly, the government said, let's declare a war on terror. You might remember that was George W. Bush and the war on terror. So, what do we have out of the war on terror? Well, luckily, we have not had, and this is, I do applaud the organizations and law enforcement, we haven't had another terrorist attack like 9/11. We also created the Department of Homeland Security and TSA, and we spent trillions and trillions of dollars, and also we stepped on some civil liberties, didn't we? We started being more of a monitoring society and sort of hearing that maybe now your emails are being watched and your communication is being monitored. 3 wars. All of them have never ended. None of them have ever been won. they're still in full-blown existence, and we've created trillions of dollars of debt, and the productive society members that run businesses and work in private enterprise that pay all the taxes continue to pay and foot the bill for these wars. So now we got the war on coronavirus. Why am I bothered? Because states like California, New York, and Illinois have issued stay-at-home orders and have decided they're going to enforce this. Now, it's just going to be a recommendation, Governor Newsom of California says, and maybe societal pressure will keep people from doing this. Really? You ever know, like when they pass a law and they say, well, it's not really like when they pass seatbelt laws, it's not like we're going to pull people over. We're just saying it's a good idea to wear your seatbelt. Flash forward 2 years, and there are roadblocks checking to see if you have your seatbelt on. Yes, I'm a libertarian, which means I do not like government overreach and government telling me what I can do in any fashion. I'm also a small business person. So this is not a political point. This is a let's look at the future point. We now have shuttered businesses. We are going to choose winners and losers. And I feel very, very strongly about this as a self-employed small business person for 26 years. You have folks that I know that have taken their life savings and put it into a restaurant or a bar or a laundromat and whatever they might have, and they are being put out of business right now almost by government decree. You're not allowed to go out. You're not allowed to do business. We've got this war on this virus. Well, try telling that this is not essential. You know, that's the thing about essential businesses. You're a non-essential business. Well, you know, to the person, the man and wife and their family that started this thing, that the kids are in there working on weekends and they pay their mortgage and they pay for their cars and they pay for their children's college, it's pretty darn essential to them now, isn't it? You see, we have a government that's so out of touch that they not only don't understand what small business is, they're going to shutter them and then get political credit for having done so for the greater good. Political credit for saying, you know what, we had to be an abundance of caution because we didn't know what we're up against. You have lives that are being ruined and might even be taken. I know that we will have a spike in suicide rates among the self-employed and the small business owning groups that are absolutely being devastated, being rocked right now. I know that we see things like, oh, but there's going to be small business administration loans. Let me just tell you how loans work. You're supposed to pay them back. Okay, so we have now a government-imposed shutting down of the economy and telling you you're not allowed to run your business for the next 3 weeks. And then we'll go ahead and make it, we'll make it so you can borrow some money. Oh, so I can go into debt even more so. Be very careful, America. The income tax was begun in 1913. It was just temporary. It wasn't going to be around for long. It was just take care of a little bit of a problem. And here we are, 107 years later, and you still have the income tax. The war on poverty, 1964. Still going today, still very costly. Trillions of dollars have been spent on it. Hasn't moved the needle on the number of impoverished Americans. The war on drugs. Not only did we never win it, got as much drug use going on, we finally threw in the towel and started just legalizing it and taxing it. But we still have the money being spent and the erosion of civil liberties because of the Drug Enforcement Administration and some of the policies about what they can seize, what they can do. Most of the people that are in our prisons right now are in there because of the war on drugs. And then the war on terror created trillions of dollars of government entities, and arguably you lost some of your civil liberties. Be very careful, America. This is a slippery slope. Yes, I'm standing on the side of small business people because I am one. And I can tell you that the devastation and the lives that are being ruined right now are going to be way more than the number of people that are infected with a virus. And these are long-term effects. That you think it doesn't matter to you, that restaurant on the corner that's going to be closed right now may not reopen ever. So does that help you to have a lot of vacant property in your neighborhood? I don't think so. And remember, all those small business people, they can't now spend money with your business. They can't spend money to go and do what they do, all because we declared a war on a virus. I'm Damian Mason. I'm going to continue to help my small business friends. In fact, I'm going to start doing some Zoom meetups. I'll schedule one for this week where we can get together on Zoom. I'll make it in the evening so you can pour yourself a drink and you can just sit down and you can talk to some other people that are self-employed small business people. If nothing else, it's for support. Stay tuned. And also, be well.